Today we will be beginning with GOC part 2 lecture number 16, but make sure you watch the previous ones before viewing this one. In GOC part 2 we are discussing isomerism. Part 1 we've already discussed about the nomenclature of the organic compounds. And in isomerism the topic that we are discussing is optical isomerism, and this is going to be optical isomerism lecture number 8. This is going to be the last lecture where we are going to wind up with the discussion. And what we are going to discuss today? Well, there are going to be small little topics that we will be discussing, but very important ones. So we will be learning today what is a racemic mixture. Then we will be learning two very important terms, what is optical purity and enantiomeric excess. And then we will be talking about very important discussion, racemic mixtures resolution. What do we mean by that and how we are going to do that? And then finally, to conclude, there is one little topic that is left, that we will be discussing what are erythro and trio molecules. So everything is going to be important, small little things, interesting little things, summating the whole discussion of optical isomerism. So I am Dr. Ritu Jauhar, your educator from the channel H2O, the A to Z of chemistry, and I hope you are going to enjoy this learning with me. So let us begin the lecture today. So today, as it is the last lecture on optical isomerism, I am going to start with a question. It is not written in the form of a question, but it is a question. And what is a question? Well, in front of you there is a name 2-bromobutane. I would like you all to tell me whether this compound, this is going to show optical isomerism or not. Well, I know all of you know that this compound is going to show optical isomerism. There is going to be one chirality center, and for one chirality center you all know very well 100% the molecule is going to be a chiral molecule, right? If it is a chiral molecule, it is going to show optical activity. All right, so now can we draw the enantiomeric pair for this compound? Yes, we can do that. So let us do that. So these are the two enantiomers of 2-bromobutane. And then what have you learned? Well, you can name these compounds according to the RS system of nomenclature. I would want you all to do that also. So well, this is the RS system of nomenclature. You arrange all the 4 groups around the chirality center according to their priority order. I hope you all know this very well. Bromine is going to be group number 1, highest atomic number. Then it is going to be the ethyl group, then the methyl group, and hydrogen is going to be group number 4 with the lowest atomic number. Next, what do? Well, we have to arrange the 4th priority group with the dash or the dotted line or the hashed wedge. So this is actually in the position, so there is no problem. So we just make an arrow from group number 1 to group number 2, and you see that this is in the anti-clockwise direction. So this is S2-bromobutane, and its enantiomer will be obviously having the opposite configuration. It will be having R configuration. We can cross check that by again looking at the position of the arrows from 1 to 2. This is in the clockwise direction. So these are the two enantiomers, S2-bromobutane and R2-bromobutane. This is all that you have learned in the previous lectures, nothing new. Now there is one more question I ask you people, and the question is that we have 3 samples containing 2-bromobutane. Nothing except 2-bromobutane, and obviously a solvent which we will be adding, which is going to be optically inactive. Okay, and now we put this into the polarizer and we find out the 3 samples, they have a specific rotation of 23.1 degree, 0 degree and 9.2 degrees. Can you explain, when we have 3 different samples containing the same compound, well, why is there a difference in the specific rotation that you people have observed? Have you done some wrong assessment, or there is something more to it? Well, there's something obviously more to it. And what is it? Well, 23.1 degrees, this is going to be the specific rotation for S plus 2-bromobutane pure enantiomer. You will not be able to know which one is plus or minus until you have put it in the polarizer, and I have put my sample in the polarizer and I find that 23.1 degree, the value this came up for S plus 2-bromobutane. butane, the pure enantiomer. Okay, and then I check the 0 degree sample value. Well, this is for the racemic mixture of the two enantiomers of 2-bromobutane and the 9.2 degree value. This is when we have an enantiomeric excess of one of the enantiomers. Now, what do we mean by a racemic mixture? What do we mean by this enantiomeric excess? This is what you are going to learn in this lecture, and then you will be able to tell why this value of 0 degree came, why this value of 9.2 degree came, and this was obviously the pure enantiomer. So this, there should be no doubt about it that the S plus 2 bromobutane, this has a specific rotation of 23.1 degree. Okay, so now let us learn about, first of all, the racemic mixture. So the racemic mixture we will be understanding with the help of an example of lactic acid. I hope you all remember what is the IUPAC name of lactic acid. It is 2-hydroxypropanoic acid. And once you know the IUPAC name, you will be drawing the structure and you will find out that there is one chirality center. One chirality center, 100% the molecule is going to be optically active. We draw the two enantiomers. We name the two enantiomers. One is S-lactic acid and the other is going to be R-lactic acid. Which one of these is going to be dextrorotatory, which one of these is going to be levorotatory is something that we will be finding out when we put the two compounds separately in the polarizer and check what is going to be the rotation for the two compounds. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a mixture of these two compounds, and a mixture also in such a way that I will be mixing equal amounts of the two enantiomers. And when I do that, that mixture is what is going to be called as a racemic mixture. A mixture of equal amounts of the two enantiomers, for example, R minus lactic acid and S plus lactic acid, is called as a racemic mixture or a racemate. Now, how did I write a minus and a plus? Well, I have already put my samples into the polarizer experimentally. It has been found that R lactic acid is levorotatory and S lactic acid is dextrorotatory. Okay, so other ways there was no way for me to find that out. Now I have done that mixing. Now what is the property of this racemic mixture? Well, the racemic mixture, this is not going to rotate the plane of polarized light. This is going to be optically inactive. Why is it so? Because in the racemic mixture, there are two types of molecules of S-lactic acid and R-lactic acid. For every molecule in the racemic mixture that is going to rotate the plane of polarization in one direction, there is also going to be a mirror image compound that is going to rotate the plane of polarization in the opposite direction. So as a result, the light which is going to come out from the racemic mixture, this is going to be unchanged plane of polarization. So that is meaning that one compound is rotating the light in the clockwise direction, the other is rotating it in the anti-clockwise direction. So as a result, the light going to come out is going to be unchanged. There is going to be no change in its plane, and therefore the value of specific rotation that we will be observing is going to be 0 degree, and the compound, sorry, not the compound, we will be calling that as a racemic mixture. It is a mixture of two compounds. So that racemic mixture, we will be terming it as optically inactive. Okay, so I hope you have understood this. So the symbol that we will be using for the racemic mixture, it is going to be a plus minus. So we can write lactic acid and in front of that put this plus minus. So it means that we have taken a racemic mixture of S-lactic acid and R-lactic acid. Or we can also put a symbol DL before that, or we can also use a RS to specify that we have taken a racemic mixture rather than taking one of the enantiomers. Okay, I hope this is clear. Similarly, for the previous example, if I write plus minus 2 bromobutane, so this would mean that I have taken a mixture of plus 2 bromobutane and an equal amount of minus 2 bromobutane. So the next we will be understanding what is enantiomeric excess, and this is something that you can just look at the word also and have some idea about it, that there is going to be excess of one enantiomer. What is going to be exactly that it is meaning? Let us understand more. So first of all, the three values that we had taken, I hope you all remember, one value was 23.1 degree. So an enantiomeric pure sample where there is going to be only one enantiomer in the sample, we call it as a enantiomeric pure sample. So for example, if we had taken S plus 2 bromobutane, it will have an observed specific rotation of plus 23.1 because we know that the specific rotation for the compound is 23.1. Okay, so we have some experimental data already with us that there is a specific rotation of 23.1 degree for S plus 2 bromobutane. So if the observed sample also has the same value, this means that the sample, this is enantiomerically pure sample. And then we had the value of 0 degree. So the sample of 2 bromobutane which had an observed specific rotation of 0 degree, now we understand that the compound is going to be a racemic mixture. It is not going to be one compound, it is going to be a mixture of two compounds which we call as a racemic mixture. Okay, I hope this is clear. Now, if the observed specific rotation is positive but less than 23.1 as we had in the sample 9.2 degree value, so we know that we have a mixture of enantiomers and the mixture contains more of the enantiomer with the S configuration than the enantiomer with the R configuration, and this is called as enantiomeric excess. Why am I saying that it contains more of the S configuration enantiomer? Is because the specific rotation that came as plus 9.2. If it would have been minus, well, we would have said that the enantiomer with the R configuration is more than the enantiomer with the S configuration. Okay, so I hope you understand what do we mean by enantiomeric excess. Now let us learn a bit more about it. So in case I say that I have 40% enantiomeric excess of S plus 2 bromobutane, what does this mean? Well, first of all, I'm going to give you a formula for enantiomeric excess, which is equal to the excess of single enantiomer divided by the entire mixture into 100. So what does this mean for 40% enantiomeric excess? Let us put up the values. So 40% enantiomeric excess means that there is going to be excess of the single enantiomer by 40 if we have a entire mixture being 100 parts, multiply by that 100, this would be 40%. Okay. This means that the mixture has a 40% enantiomeric excess, and that excess is of S plus enantiomer. And what is going to be the rest of the 60%? The rest of the 60% is going to be a racemic mixture. A racemic mixture which is containing equal amounts of the two enantiomers. So half of the racemic mixture is going to be the S enantiomer plus 40 we have as the excess enantiomer. Total this up and you will be having the S enantiomer total amount in the mixture. So what this means is that 70% of the mixture is going to be the S enantiomer, that is half of 60, that is 60% racemic mixture plus 40% which was the enantiomeric excess. So 30 plus 40 would be 70% and 30% is going to be the R enantiomer. So now you understand what do we mean by 40% enantiomeric excess. Okay, so the S enantiomer is greater by 40% than the R enantiomer. 70% is going to be S and 30% is going to be R. Perfectly clear? Great. So next let us understand what is another term, optical purity, and its relationship with enantiomeric excess. So when we have a sample and we observe the specific rotation for the sample, then we can calculate the optical purity of the mixture. And what is optical purity? Well, this is going to be equal to observed specific rotation over specific rotation of the pure sample. For example, we had the observed specific rotation of plus 9.2 degree for a sample of 2-bromobutane in the question that we started with. So what does this mean? What is going to be the optical purity for the compound which is going to have a specific rotation of 9.2 degrees? So optical purity is going to be 9.2 divided by the specific rotation of pure sample of S2-bromobutane, that is going to be 23.1. This will come up to 0.40, or if we talk about it in the terms of a percentage, it is going to be 40%. So this means that the optical purity of the sample we had was 0.40 or 40%, and 40% is going to mean that 40% of the mixture is optically pure. Optically pure means this contains only of one single enantiomer. So this means that the 40% of the mixture consists of an excess of the single enantiomer. Okay, so I hope it is clear to you people. As the observed specific rotation is positive, this means the solution contains excess of S plus 2 bromobutane. If it would have been negative, well, we would have called excess of R2 bromobutane. The enantiomeric excess, now this tells us how much excess S plus 2 bromobutane is present in the mixture. And if the compound is chemically pure, there is no impurity present in the sample, we can say that the enantiomeric excess and optical purity will be the same. Okay, I hope this is clear. Great. So now you know what are enantiomers, you also know what are meso compounds, and you have just now learned what is a racemic mixture. So let us establish a relationship between them. What are the similarities? What are the differences between them? So first of all, we will be starting with the example of tartaric acid, without which the study of optical isomerism is never complete. So you all know by heart now that tartaric acid, this has 3 stereoisomers. One is the mesotartaric acid and the other two, they form a pair of enantiomers, right? Now, what is the relationship between mesotartaric acid and the enantiomers, or you can say what is the difference between them? So the mesotartaric acid, this is going to have different properties than both the enantiomeric forms. Why is it going to be so? Well, the mesotartaric acid, you know what is the relationship with the enantiomers. It is going to be a diastereomer of the enantiomeric form. It is that stereoisomer which is not the mirror image of the enantiomer. And you have learnt in the last lecture what is the differences between the diastereomers and the enantiomers. There you learned that the enantiomers, they have similar physical properties, whereas the diastereomers, they have different physical properties, right? So the mesotartaric acid is a diastereomer of the enantiomeric form, and the diastereomers, they have different physical properties like different melting point, different boiling point, different solubilities, different specific rotation. And this is what differentiates the mesotartaric acid from the enantiomers. So now what is the relationship between racemic mixture and the enantiomer and the mesoform? So you all know what is the relationship of the racemic mixture with the enantiomers. The racemic mixture is going to be a mixture which we have obtained by mixing equimolar amounts of the enantiomer, which means that structure 2 and structure 3, if we mix equal amounts or equimolar amounts of the two, the mixture that we will be getting is called as the racemic mixture. The racemic mixture of the two enantiomeric forms, this is going to be different from the meso compound. Number one, that the racemic mixture of the two enantiomers, this can be resolved, this can be separated. We can separate the two enantiomers from the racemic mixture. How we are going to do that, we are going to teach you that also today, but that is going to be a bit later. Let us first of all finish this, right? So the racemic mixture of the two enantiomeric compounds, we can separate the two enantiomers from the mixture, whereas if we have a mixture of a meso compound with its stereoisomer, for example, if I take a mixture of structure number 1 and structure number 2, I cannot separate them. Okay, I can separate a mixture of 2 and 3, but I cannot separate a mixture of 1 and 2 or 1 and 3. That is the difference. So we can separate a racemic mixture into the two components, but we cannot separate a meso compound and its stereoisomer from a mixture. Another very important difference between racemic mixture and meso compound, please be very attentive. Both of them, you know that they are optically inactive. Racemic mixture is also going to be optically inactive and meso compound is optically inactive. But the difference is the reason of their optical inactive. When we talk about the racemic mixture, this optical inactivity is because of external compensation. What do I mean by that is that we have a compound which is optically active, and we have added this to another compound which is optically active, but though both are optically active in such a way that they are compensating the optical activity of the other. One is rotating the light in the clockwise direction, the other is going to rotate the plane in the anti-clockwise direction. So they are compensating the effect of each other, cancelling the effect of each other, and hence such a mixture we call as optically inactive. So this optical inactivity in a racemic mixture is because of external compensation, whereas in a meso compound it is because of internal compensation. The compound in itself is having two chirality centers. One is rotating the light in the clockwise direction, the other is rotating it in the anti-clockwise direction, and hence as a result the compound is optically inactive. Here the compound is optically inactive, here the compounds, they are optically active. It is only then when we have added both of them together we get optical inactive. So this is a very big difference and a very important difference between a racemic mixture and a meso compound. So now I'm going to show you a few physical properties of tartaric acid, the three stereoisomers and the racemic mixture, so that you remember the relationship between the enantiomers, the meso compound and the racemic mixture. So let us look at some data. So here we have four compounds, actually not four compounds, it is going to be three compounds and one is going to be the racemic mixture. Okay, so we have a 2R3R tartaric acid, we have a 2S3S tartaric acid, because both of them they have opposite configuration at the two chirality center. This means this is going to be the pair of enantiomers. The next two are 3S tartaric acid. This is going to be the meso compound, and the meso compound and the enantiomer, they will be having a diastereomeric relationship. One is going to have one chirality center will be opposite in configuration and the other chirality center will be similar in configuration. This is how we differentiate the enantiomers and diastereomers as you learned in the last lecture, right? So I hope this is clear. The first two, they are enantiomers. The first and third, the second and third, they form a pair of diastereomers, and the third, this is a meso compound. And the fourth one, plus minus tartaric acid, this means this is going to be a racemic mixture of the two enantiomeric forms. Now, what have we learned? We have learned that the enantiomers, they will be having the same physical properties because they are the mirror images of each other, right? So they will be having same melting points, they will be having same solubility, they will be having same boiling points. And if you talk about the specific rotation, the value is going to be the same. It is only going to be the opposite sign because one is rotating the plane polarized light in the clockwise, the other in the anti-clockwise direction. Okay, perfectly clear. And then we have the meso compound. This is going to be having properties different from the enantiomers. As you can see the melting points, you can see the solubility, there's a difference. And the specific rotation, the value is going to be 0 because of internal compensation, not external, internal compensation, right? So next we have is the plus minus tartaric acid. Again, the racemic mixture, this also has properties different from the enantiomers. So you can see here the melting points, there's a huge difference. The solubility is although the same, but generally you will be seeing that the physical properties for the racemic mixture, they are going to different from the enantiomeric forms. And the specific rotation, again, this is also going to be 0, but this is because of external compensation. So what will you remember? The physical properties of the enantiomers, they are the same, whereas the physical properties of the diastereomers, they are different. The physical properties of the racemic mixture, they differ from the physical properties of the enantiomers. So next, now we are going to learn resolution of a racemic mixture. So what does resolution mean? Well, I've already told you that we have a racemic mixture made up of the two enantiomers. So we are going to separate now the racemic mixture into back the two enantiomers. So this process of separating the racemic mixture into its components, this is called as resolution. Now, when I'm speaking this definition, there is going to be a question in all of your minds. First of all, why did we mix these two if we have to separate them? Yes, I really consider this question a very valid one. So first of all, before I tell you how you're going to separate a racemic mixture into the two components, I'm going to give you a brief understanding. Where did this mixture get formed? How did it get formed? Are we mixing it ourselves, the two components, or is it being formed somewhere that we need to separate the two components? So let us understand this with the help of a very simple example. I'm not going to go into the elaborate details of it, just a very basic understanding in the start of organic chemistry. There are going to be so many examples, so many understandings coming up further when you are going to learn the details of organic chemistry reactions. All right. So I have supposedly a reaction in which there's a compound A and a compound B. Both of them, they are reacting to form a compound C. Compound A, for example, this is optically inactive. Compound B is optically inactive. And the compound C, which is formed, is optically active. Okay. Now I'm going to give you an example where we have these two, A and B, to be optically inactive and C to be optically active. Where is this going to be seen? There will be many examples that you will be learning. So supposedly, this is the structure that I have. Okay. So this compound A, well, does this have a chirality center? No, this does not have a chirality center because we have two hydrogens over here. So, well, we can draw a plane of symmetry in this molecule. This molecule is not going to be optically active. And then I'm going to draw, okay, a bromine. So this is also going to be optically inactive. Both of them, they are going to react. There is going to be a substitution of one of the hydrogens with a bromine. How does this happen? We are not going to go into the mechanism of all this. Just think that we are reacting this compound A with compound B, and one of the hydrogens, this is going to get replaced by bromine. So there are two possibilities, right? So one possibility is that I replace the lower hydrogen with a bromine, and the other possibility is that I replace the upper hydrogen with the bromine. Very fine. I hope you all agree with me that this can happen. Okay. Now let us see whether these compounds are optically active or not. You all can see that this carbon over here, that this is going to act as a chirality center. It has now all four different groups. So C is optically active. A and B, they were optically inactive. Okay. When such a condition is going to be there, well, we will be getting a racemic mixture. There is going to be equal amounts of the two enantiomers being formed. In fact, these two compounds, they are the enantiomers of each other. Want to check that? Just let us quickly write down the RS configuration for them. You know that these are stereoisomers because they have the same groups around the chirality center. Right, perfectly fine. Okay, so bromine is going to be priority group number 1. I'm not going to go into the details of that. You all know that, right? And hydrogen, this is present on the vertical position, so you have to go by the arrow only. So this is going to be clockwise. So this is R configuration, and here this is going to be the S configuration. So aren't these two the enantiomers of each other? If you're going to place them in front of the mirror, you are going to realize this as well. Okay, so now we have these to be the enantiomers which are being formed in a reaction. When they have been formed in a reaction, well, now we want to separate them. We have not mixed it up ourselves, right? So I hope you now understand where they have been produced and why there is a need to separate these two, because these are two distinct compounds and we want them separately. So we are going to learn how we are going to do that now. So now the racemic mixtures, they are made of enantiomers which have similar physical properties. Okay, so we cannot separate them by usual means like fractional distillation, fractional crystallization, adsorption technique. For example, what do we do in fractional distillation? In fractional distillation, we have two compounds. We want to separate them. Both of them, they must be having different boiling point, so that when we are going to heat the mixture, well, one of them is going to boil first. We will be separating that out and we will be getting the remaining portion, the second compound. So that is what happens in fractional distillation. So here now the enantiomers, they have the same physical properties, so we cannot separate them by using these processes. Then what are we supposed to do? Well, let us learn a few ways in which we can separate the racemic mixture. So usually, number one, the method that we are going to use is a mechanical separation. This method was given by Pasteur in the year 1948. He separated the racemic mixture of tartaric acid into the plus and minus tartaric acid. What did he do? He took the racemic sodium ammonium tartarate, crystallized it below 300 Kelvin to give the plus and minus variants. Okay, but this process is a very time consuming process, and this can only be used when the two enantiomers, they have separate different shaped crystallizing compounds. Only then this is going to be possible. Okay, so this is generally not used. So the next method is preferential crystallization. What do we do with this? Well, first of all, we take a supersaturated solution of a racemic mixture. We inoculate it with a crystal of one of the enantiomer. Just drop one crystal of one of the enantiomer. It can be plus enantiomer or it can be minus, any one. You are taking a crystal of that and putting it in the supersaturated solution of the racemic mixture. Or another option is you take a isomorphous crystal of another compound. What do I mean by isomorphous? Two compounds, they are said to be isomorphous when they have the same or nearly the same crystal form. Okay, so it will be having the same crystal form, so you're going to put that into the supersaturated solution of the racemic mixture. For example, if I take a supersaturated solution of the racemic sodium ammonium tartarate and I seed it with one of the crystals of the pure enantiomer, or I take a crystal of minus asparagine. So this is going to be isomorphous to sodium ammonium tartarate. Okay. And what will happen is that minus sodium ammonium tartarate, that is a levorotatory compound, this will crystallize out first. We will separate the crystals. In the liquid that is going to be left behind, we will be having the other enantiomer, and hence we have got the two enantiomers separated. Okay, this method, this is called as entrainment, and the seed crystal, this is called as entrainer. Fine, so this is one way. And now I'm going to teach you the third way, which is going to be the most important one. The third way in which we are going to separate the two enantiomers is through the formation of diastereomers, and this is called as the chemical method of resolution. Right? So what are we going to do? We are going to convert a pair of enantiomers which is present in the racemic mixture into the diastereomers. How are we going to do that? Well, this method was given first of all by Pasteur, and the principle for this method, you have a brief idea now what we are going to do. So what are we going to do is that we are going to take a racemic mixture. Supposedly it is A plus minus. So this is a racemic mixture. Fine. In this, what we are going to do is we are going to add an optically pure reagent. It can be a plus or a minus. For example, here I am taking a plus B reagent. Fine. I'm going to react this with this. What I will be getting is a mixture of two compounds, plus A plus B and minus A plus B. And these two, they are going to be a diastereomer of each other. You will be able to understand this better when I will be giving you an example. So just wait for a moment. It will be easy for me to explain you with the example actually. The reagent that we are using, that B reagent, this is called as the resolving reagent. So once the diastereomers, they have been formed, you all know that the diastereomers, they are not mirror images of each other. So they will be possessing different physical properties. And now we can separate the diastereomers using processes like fractional distillation, fractional crystallization, etc. And once we have separated the two diastereomers, well, the pure diastereomer we can decompose to give the corresponding enantiomer than the originally optical active reagent back again. Okay, so we started with compound A's, the racemic mixture, and B, a optically pure reagent. We got two diastereomers. We separated the diastereomers by physical means, again fractional crystallization, fractional distillation, etc. Once we have separated the diastereomer, for example, we have this diastereomer, so we are going to make it give back plus A and plus B back again. Similarly, minus A and plus B back again. So what you will be getting is separately the two enantiomers and the optically active reagent back again. Okay, so I hope the principle is clear. I will now give you an example so that you have a complete understanding what we are doing over here. So the example that I am taking over here is the reaction of an acid with an alcohol to give a ester. I hope you all remember this because you have studied this in class 10th. While in class 10th, reading about carbon and its compounds, you have studied the esterification reaction. An acid alcohol forms an ester. An ester on reaction back with water is going to give us the acid and alcohol back again. That is why I have chosen this example, not any other, because you know this reaction previously from your class 10th knowledge. Fine. So here what we will be doing is we will be taking a optically active acid, okay, plus acid and minus acid in equal amounts, that we will be calling it as a racemic mixture. We will be reacting it with an alcohol which is going to be pure optically active compound. Either it has to be a plus alcohol or it has to be a minus alcohol. Fine. So here we have taken example. For example, a plus alcohol. When this plus acid and plus alcohol will react, we will be getting a plus ester. When a minus acid and plus alcohol we will be reacting, we call that as a minus ester. Okay, these two, they are going to be the diastereomers of each other. They will be having different physical properties, so we can separate them. When we have separated them, well, we are going to add water, and what we will be getting from this plus ester is the plus acid and plus alcohol. And when we are going to put water into this minus ester, what we will be getting is the minus acid and the plus alcohol. So we have separated the two enantiomers, the plus acid and the minus acid. Let us look at the compound as an example. So here what you can see is that this is a COH. So this is an acid. Alright, in this acid what you can see is that there is one chirality center. One chirality center means this compound is optically active, right? So if you write the configuration for this, it is going to be S or R. We are going to have COH group to be group number 1, C2H5 to be group number 2, CH3 will be 3, and hydrogen will be 4. Hydrogen is present in a Fischer projection in vertical position, so just check the arrow from 1 to 2. It is in the anti-clockwise direction, so it is the S configuration. If you look at this one, well, it is going to be COH2 C2H5. It is the R configuration. So this is S, this is R, means these two, they are the enantiomers for each other. Okay, perfectly fine. Now the next structure you can see, this is a CH2OH. So this is an alcohol. And the alcohol, what is the configuration that it is having? So again you can see that there is one chirality center. This is optically active compound B that we have taken. This is the racemic mixture compound plus minus A, and this is going to be the optically active compound B. Fine. So here what you can see is this will be priority group number 1 and C2H5 will be group number 2. So the arrow is going to be in the clockwise direction. So this is R configuration, right? Now what are we going to do? We are going to individually react. I'm going to show you the individual reaction when this compound reacts with the alcohol and this compound reacts with the alcohol, and what will the product be formed. So here what you can see is the first enantiomer from compound A. So this was having the S configuration. We are making it react with the R alcohol. What will happen in the esterification reaction is there is going to be a loss of the water molecule. So OH from the carboxylic acid and H from the alcohol, this is going to be lost. When this is going to be lost, there is going to be a bond formed over here between the CO and the O. Okay, and this is what you can see over here. So this bond has been formed, and this is what we call as the esterification reaction. This compound over here having the functional group COO, this is the ester. Okay, and what is going to be the configuration of the two chirality centers? This one is going to have the S configuration and this is having the R configuration. So the compound that we have formed is now a SR compound. Just remember this, and just we will be comparing it with the second compound that is being formed in the reaction. So now what you can see is the second reaction with the second enantiomer R and the alcohol R, which was optically pure. So when they are going to react, what you will be getting, again by the loss of the water molecule, you will be forming a ester. Now this chirality center will be having the R configuration, this chirality center will be having the R configuration. So the compound that is formed is a RR compound. Which was the first compound formed? Well, that was the RS compound, right? And you can see that one of the chirality centers is having the same configuration and one has the different configuration. So these two, they are going to be diastereomers. Okay, I hope this is clear. And once we have got diastereomers, well, they can be separated by fractional distillation, fractional crystallization, and you will be getting the two compounds separately. Now react these individually with water. What you will be getting is back the acid and alcohol. So the acid from the first you will be getting is a minus acid, and this one you will be getting the plus acid. So you have separated the racemic mixture into the two enantiomers. I hope this is clear how we have got the two enantiomers back from the racemic mixture, and first of all, why did we need to separate it as well? So this essentially brings me to the end of learning of optical isomerism, except that there is one small little topic left which I want you people to know about. It is not very frequently asked in the examination, but my students, they should know everything so that they can do any question in the examination. So the topic that is left for you people is that we have to learn what are threo and erythromolecules. It's a very easy concept. Let us quickly do that. Now you all know how to write a Fisher projection. When we write a Fisher projection is a two-dimensional structure that we are giving for a three-dimensional molecule. Right? So when we have a Fisher projection for two stereogenic center, we arrange the molecule in an eclipsed conformation. Now what is an eclipsed conformation? You will be learning next when we start with the lectures on conformational isomerism. But you all at least understand this much, that in a Fisher projection, the way we are representing the molecule is that the horizontal line, this represents the two groups around the carbon which are projecting forwards towards us out of the plane of paper, and the vertical bond, the groups it is representing is that are going backwards away from the plane of paper. So this is what you all know of. Fine. So here now we are going to just have a Fisher projection for one molecule, and this molecule, what you can see is that there are two chirality centers and two chirality centers which are dissimilar in nature. One side you have a COH group, another side you have a CH3. So these are dissimilar chirality center. This means how many stereoisomers are going to be formed over here? 2 to the power n. That means 4. And all the 4, they are going to be optical isomers. There is going to be no meso compound formed, because for a meso compound, the two chirality centers, they should be similar in nature. Fine, I hope this is clear. That is how you will be drawing that plane of symmetry. So we have the 4 optical isomers being formed. They are going to be 2 pairs of enantiomers that are being formed. So one is going to be structure 1 and structure 2. These are the mirror images of each other. So this is 1 pair of enantiomer, and these two, they will be forming another pair of enantiomers. Okay, so in this pair of enantiomer, what you can see is that the two hydrogens, the like substituents, they are on same side. The OH like substituents, they are on the same side, right? So even in this one and in this one, what you can see is structure number 3, the H and the OH, they are on the same side of the vertical bond. Okay, and here also the two groups, they are different, this also they are different. So here what you have to remember is when we have the carbon chain to be vertically placed and the like substituents, they are on the same side of the Fischer projection, like we have for this structure number 1 and structure number 2, we will be calling them as the erythromolecules. Okay, these two, they will be called as erythroenantiomers, right? And when I compare structure number 1 and structure number 3, what is going to be 1 for structure number 3? Structure number 1 and structure number 3, they are related to each other as diastereomers. Okay, they are related to each other as diastereomers because they are not mirror images of each other, and this erythromolecule is a diastereomer, erythrodiastereomer for structure number 3. Okay, I hope this is clear. So that will make a understanding by just the name. When I say that I have a erythrodiastereomer for structure number 3, this means that structure number 3, this will be having the like substituents on the opposite side, and my structure number 1 will be having the like substituents on the same side. Clear? And when we have the like substituents on the opposite side of the Fischer projection, the molecule, we call it as a triodiastereomer. Let us look at one more molecule to understand that. So the molecule that I am going to take over here, this is 3-chloro-2-butanol. So let us first of all write down the structure. So in the structure, what you can see is that we have two chirality centers, right? And the two chirality centers, they are again dissimilar chirality centers. So for this compound also, we will be able to have 4 stereoisomers. So let us quickly draw them. First of all, here you are seeing the wedge and dash representation, and in this wedge and dash representation, this is a staggered conformation. Now again, what is staggered conformation? What is eclipsed conformation? You will be learning on the lectures on conformational isomerism, but you know how to convert a wedge and dash representation taking the help of the RS configuration into the Fischer projection. That I have taught you already in the last lecture, right? So once you have done that, what you can see in the Fischer projection again, these two hydrogens, they are on the same side. So this will be a erythromolecule. Here again, the two hydrogens, they are on the same side, again an erythromolecule, although we have a OH and Cl. Okay, so but you can see that these two, they are similar. And in the other next structure number 3, what you can see, the two hydrogens, they are on the opposite side. So this will be a trio molecule. Again, the H and the H, they are on opposite side. So this is a trio molecule. Structure number 1 and structure number 2, they are enantiomers. So we will be calling them as erythroenantiomers. Structure number 3 and 4, they are trio enantiomers. Okay, and what is the relationship between 1 and 3? Well, 1 is going to be the erythrodiastereomer for 3, and 3 is going to be the triodiastereomer for 1. Okay, so I hope this is clear, and you can continue for the next. So you can see this representation also to understand separately all the enantiomers and the diastereomers for the 4 stereoisomers. Structure number 1 and 2, they are enantiomers, and now you also know that they are erythroenantiomers. 3 and 4, they are also enantiomers, but they are trioenantiomers, right? So you can now differentiate between the two types of enantiomeric pairs also. Similarly, the diastereomer 1 and 3, this is a erythro and this is going to be a trio, and you can do for the rest also. Now before I conclude this lecture, there is one more important thing that I just want you to recap, and that was that we started the lectures starting with the example of diastereomers as the cis and the transgeometrical isomers. So the cis and transgeometrical isomers, they are stereoisomers, but they are not mirror images of each other. Hence we call them as diastereomers. they are not enantiomers. And the stereoisomerism, now we have two types, enantiomers and diastereomers. Enantiomers, they are going to be always optically active compounds, but diastereomers, they can be optically active or they can be optically inactive compounds. For example, the cis and trans isomers, the geometrical isomers, they will be fitting into this category. And these diastereomers also, they are optically active. The geometrical isomers, they were optically inactive. These are optically active compounds and they form a pair of diastereomers, right? So I hope you have all learned everything. You are going to able to do each and every question of optical isomerism except for one more thing still. And that is, in many of the previous year questions, you will be seeing the projections in the examination for the various molecules to be the Sohaus projections or the Newman projections. So that is where you can get stack up. So I will be taking the next lecture on those projections as well, so that you have an understanding how we are going to convert the Fisher projections and the Wedge and Dash representations into those two types of projections. And then you will be able to do all questions of optical isomerism, and that would also be starting my lectures on conformational isomerism. So I hope you enjoyed your learning of optical isomerism with me, and you are looking forward for the next lecture where we are going to talk about all the projections, all the four types of different projections. So see you again. Have a nice day. God bless you.